Hi, my name is Shawn, and on behalf of the Oregon State Engineering Without Borders Club, we are pleased to provide this AutoCAD tutorial. Now, first things first, if you're new to AutoCAD and you're an Oregon State University student, you can actually download AutoCAD off of the Oregon State University website. They provide you a free access key, so if you ever want to play around or follow along with this tutorial, you can. Without further ado, let's get started here. So this is the main home screen. This is kind of what you see when you first open up the application, and we're just going to start a basic drawing here. Right there, that looks good. Now this is basically the user interface here that we have. You have your XY coordinates down here. You have this nice ribbon full of different commands that we'll be going over today. And yeah, first off, let's start down here. I don't know if you can see, but there's quite a lot of different types of settings for your document. And these are all very important to start with. As you can see, there's a lot of different preferences. And so quickly, the first thing you want to do is you want to establish your units, because like any drawing, units are very important. Units come in architectural, decimal, engineering, fractional, and scientific. And for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to use the engineering units. As you can see, it's specified in inches. We can also choose decimal. Decimal provides measurement in scalar quantity. And architectural here is able to measure lines and distances with feet and inches. Actually, we'll use architectural for this one. Feet and inches are typically what most people work with, because the metric system we typically don't use unless we're working with other types of projects. So anyways, with that being said, down here are a few more important types of preferences and whatnot. This here is called Object Snap. And the way Object Snap works is, if you were to draw a line and you wanted to connect that line and draw another line, these preferences allow your cursor to easily snap onto the end of one line and tell the computer to draw another line from it. So as you can see here, if I were to disable endpoint here, and I were to draw just some random line, if we were to try to draw another line here, it wouldn't quite be able to snap onto the center. Now, if we choose endpoint here, as you can see, as we drag our cursor here, it snaps right on perfectly. You're able to draw a point at draw a line at any specific, anything you desire, really. It's pretty simple. And the only other two really important things you need to know here is polar tracking. Now, polar tracking basically allows you to draw a line at a certain interval of degrees. So if I were to select, 40, 90, 135, if I were to draw lines here, it will snap at 45 degrees, it'll snap at 90 degrees, it'll snap at 135 degrees. So polar tracking is good just for basic angle reference and whatnot. Typically I like to use 45, 90, 135, but it's really up to the user and whatnot and what kind of needs they're looking for. Let's see, next up we have scale. Scale is very important. So for those of you who are kind of new to design, obviously when you're making a drawing, it's usually scaled down. It's usually not one-to-one scale, because one-to-one scale basically means the length of a line on the drawing is the actual length of the thing you're building in real life, right? And so if you were to build, like, I don't know, a skyscraper type of building, it would be impossible to use 1-to-1 scale, because that would mean, the line on your drawing would have to be the same height as the actual building, which isn't the case here. But yes, this is your scale, and typically people hand draw out their design first, and so you can kind of decide to choose a scale for yourself. But for now, we'll stick to 1-to-1. Yes. Okay, so let's get into the actual drawing of the AutoCAD application. So first off, over here is your basic type of drawing commands. Line is very simple, and as you can see, when I move my cursor around, it says to specify the very first point. So you can drag around, you can snap to here. When you click, then it'll say specify the next point. And so anywhere you want, you can specify the next point. And you can continue to draw lines however you want. And once you're done, you simply press the escape key and you have your new lines formed. It's that simple. Yep. And if you were to click and drag like this, you're able to select these lines in mass quantities, and you're able to do things like delete them and stuff like that. Yes. Let's see. The next command we will go over is the circle command. So circle is really easy. It's pretty self-explanatory. It says specify center point for the circle. So if you're to specify here, then it tells you to specify the radius. So you're able to, size it any bit you want. Now it is important to note, you can see that as you move your cursor around, the actual measurement of the radius is highlighted in blue right there. And you can actually specify the radius yourself. It's really easy. Basically all you have to do is, as you're moving it around, you on your keyboard, without clicking anything, you can type in your radius. So let's say we wanted this to be 10 inches. Type in 10. Double quotation marks represent inches, whereas single quotation marks represent feet. We press enter, and now we have a circle with our new radius. And yeah, so that's basically the circle command. Now, let's say you wanted to draw a circle, but you didn't quite know the radius. You can easily do this. And you can see it says specify radius of circle, or. The or is very important. If you hit the down arrow on your keyboard, it can give you different options instead of specifying the radius. So for example, the diameter. And in this case, now it will ask for the diameter of the circle. So if you said, I don't know, 5 inches, it would be just like that. So that's your basic circle and line command. There are a few other commands here, but like the arc command, very important one. Basically, you're able to create certain arcs. My favorite arc is the 3-point arc, where basically you're able to, as it shows you, specify a start point, specify a second point, and you're able to bend and curve this line into any way you want. So there's many different ways to draw lines in your document. Yeah. And with that being said, let's start to get into some of the kind of cool manipulations of these lines and whatnot. So over here is your modify panel, and this panel is very important. It makes life so much easier. First off, we have the move command. So if you draw something, you can select your object, click enter. You can specify a base point. Let's say our base point wants to be the center of the circle. Now you're able to move this drawing, pretty much measuring from the center of the circle. It's very, very easy to use. Now you can also choose to specify a different base point. Let's say I wanted to move my circle from here, and you'd be able to move it here. It's very, very easy. Next up, we have the copy command. This is very useful if you have, multiple objects that are the exact same measurement. You can select. Once again, you can specify your base point, let's say the center, and now you're able to copy your shape to any desired location you'd like. Very cool command. Let's see. But yeah, overall, AutoCAD is a very useful program, and if you can understand basic commands like these, then you can create some pretty complex drawings in itself. Yeah. Let's see. Next up, we have the mirror command. This is a very cool command. Basically, you're going to select an object, and when it says specify first point of the mirror line, basically you're going to draw a line in this document, and it's going to kind of be like your axes that you flip the or invert the your specified object over. So let's say draw a line here. As you can see, it already starts to generate the mirrored image. Now let's say we chose this mirror, then it would flip it downwards supposedly, and when you click, now erase source objects just means that when you mirror this object, do you want to keep the original object? So if we click yes, then it will erase the source object and we'll only be left with this one. So pretty basic command as well. Now let's see. The next command we'll talk about is the rotate command. This is pretty self-explanatory. Select your object, enter, specify your base point. This is your axis of rotation. Now you're able to rotate your line however you please. The fillet command. This is a very awesome command. Now let's say we had 90-degree angle, just like this, right? And for some reason you needed to round this corner. What you're able to do is you can click the fillet button, you can click the first object, you can specify the radius here by clicking the down arrow. I want my radius to be, I don't know, 3 inches. That sounds pretty reasonable. Then you can select your second object, and as you can see, it creates this very nice curve that has a radius of 3. And so that's the fillet command. The last one I want to go over, actually, there's 2 more. This is the offset command, very, very useful. Now it says specify the offset distance, and what this means is basically if you select a line, it'll offset and create another line that is a given distance away. So let's say, I don't know, 3 inches again. Say we wanted to create an object 3 inches away from its original position. So we would select this object. As you can see, if we move our cursor up, it'll create a line 3 inches above where we selected. If we go down, we'll also do the same thing. And so offset command is good if you need, to kind of just basically offset a given object. It's very useful, very useful. Let's see. The last command I want to go over is the trim command, and personally, this is kind of a unique command. I wouldn't say it's all that useful, but it's good to have in mind. So let's say we have this line here, right? We have this line, we have this line, we have this line. Now if we wanted to just have this line on the inside without these, these two ends here that extend beyond our these 2 lines here, we're able to click the trim command, and basically we're gonna select the region that we want our line to exist in. So let's say we wanted to eliminate these 2 corners. All we do is we choose to keep these 2 lines here, click enter, and by selecting object to trim, we can select this one. And what this does is, it eliminates this line on the inside here and keeps this one on the outside. I can demonstrate that again, sorry. So let's say we have some complex feature here like this. Now, if we wanted to get rid of all of these lines on the inside, we're able to click the trim command, specify these two lines. Now we're able to eliminate all of these lines inside. So it's actually pretty useful. It allows you to kind of, you know, trim these lines without actually having to redraw them, which can be very useful. Saves a lot of time, definitely. Yeah. But that is it for about the this modify panel here. It's pretty simple stuff, and what I like about AutoCAD is that you know, the command explains, you know, what it wants you to input for itself. So that's really useful. The next thing we're going to move on to is the layers, and the layers tab is very important. What the layers tab does is basically, if you've ever worked with Photoshop or anything, you know that there's a lot of different parts to your design, and sometimes if all the parts are showing at once, it's very hard to look at because there's so many things happening. And what layers do is it allows you to only look at certain parts of the drawing that you want. So if we go here to the layer properties, currently we just have one layer. It's called 0. Now let's say we wanted to add another layer. We can right click, new layer. We can name this, I don't know, let's try apples. Let's say we had a layer called apples, new layer called bananas, and a layer called cantaloupe. I don't know if this is how you spell cantaloupe. I sure hope so. And anyways, so with each of these layers, you're able to customize many different things. You're able to choose the color first that it appears as. So for apples, we'll select red. For bananas, we'll select yellow. And for cantaloupe, we'll select green. There we go. And with, you know, these types of lines, if you've ever looked at an architectural drawing, you know that not all of the lines quite exactly look the same. So, for example, line weight here, we can choose for each of these layers to have specific line weights, you know, how heavy they look in the document. So for cantaloupe, let's just select 1 millimeter, a really thick line. And for apples, let's select line type. So this is the different types of lines. As you can see here, a whole selection to choose from. And all of these presets will be available to you as you install AutoCAD on your computer. It comes preset with all of these different lines. So yeah, you should look like this typically. So we can select center line 2 for apples. Alright, so now we have all sorts of different layers. Now let's say we want our first two bending lines to be apples. So we can hold control, or actually we can select, hold control, we can just select all of these, yeah. Right there and right there. Alright, so we have our line selected. We can go into our drop-down menu and, change the layer to apples. And what does this do? This changes the color to red, and it changes it to the line type that we specified in the beginning. So let's say we wanted to make, I don't know, let's make this one, and this one. Let's make that banana. So as you can see, all that does is really change the color, because that's all we changed bananas to. And finally, the last layer is cantaloupe with a very heavy line weight. So if we were to select these lines here, Go here, select cantaloupe. It now creates these lines, which if you zoom in, you can't really see it here, but it is in fact a little bit thicker than the other lines. And so now you have all these different lines with all these different layers. And the cool part is, now that these are linked to their layers, let's say we want to change the color of cantaloupe to dark blue. It now changes the cantaloupe lines to dark blue. So this is an easy way to make changes to any different parts of your drawing. Like imagine you designed an entire structure and you realized that the lines were supposed to be dashed, you know? Instead of redoing the entire drawing in line format, you can simply keep them on the layer and you can change them all at once. So it's a very useful command. And so let's say we had all of this clutter and we only wanted to see the apples. What we'd have to do is we'd have to turn off the bananas layer, turn off the cantaloupe layer. Okay, wait, hold on. Current layer on, 0. We're going to make this our current layer, that way we're not drawing in anything else. So we can freeze our cantaloupe layer. And as you can see, the only thing you're left with is your apples layer. You can make any changes without, changing any other parts of the drawing. We can also do the same for the bananas layer, as you can see here, or the cantaloupe layer. So layers are very useful because it kind of simplifies your drawing, You're able to design and really just work without any of the clutter. So yeah, that's very important. And yeah, so now that we're done with the layers, the next segment I want to do is the dimensions layer tab. Now, dimensions are very important because you're able to tell people how long something is, basically measuring distances or angles between certain references or objects. And so dimensions are a very key part of any design. And so first thing we want to do, the annotation panel here, we have our basic dimension command, and as you can see, it asks us to select 2 points between where we want to measure. So let's say we want to measure the distance between here and here, and it gives us 3, right, which is what we specified, but it gives it to us in the decimal format. Now you're probably wondering, oh, we're in architectural, why is it giving it to us in a decimal format? And the reason why is because basically it defaults to using decimal. At the start of every drawing, it'll default to using decimal. And so the way you can change that is you go here into the Annotations tab, and as you can see, there is different text styles. And we're in standard right now, which, sets everything to display in decimal. Now, the easiest way to do this is to create a text style of your own. And so we can start a new text style. We'll call this architectural, just like that. And so here you can specify really anything. You can specify the font name, the font style, and you can also select just how everything looks, basically. And so for architectural, we want to height, width, yeah, that all looks good. We want to set this as our current dimension style. Now, for architectural, let's see, let me go back into manage. For architectural here, what we decided on the font name here, Arial, typically you want to probably ask your instructor what type of font you want to use. So let's say we use Courier New, for example. This is unlikely what the type of font you're going to have to use, but yeah, we can width factor, oblique angle, upside down, annotated. Yeah, so we're able to set the font to Courier New when we apply this and we close. Now let's say we select our dimension. We change the text style to architectural. As you can see now, this font slightly changed. It's now in Courier New. So you're able to individually edit the text here. Now, as I was saying before, this is still in decimal format. So, easiest way to do this is instead of editing the text, we can edit the actual dimension itself. So, come here, and we have our dimension styles. So we can manage this. Now let's say we want a new dimension style. We're going to call this architectural. Continue. And here there is lots of different settings you can do. So first thing, we're in primary units tab. The unit format is decimal. If we change that to architectural, you'll see in the sample it now displays inches, which is what we want. We can also mess around with everything. The text style we said was architectural like before in Courier New font. We can change the text height as well. We can make the text height 3/4 of an inch if we wanted to. The text color we can do by layer. This basically means that the color of the text is going to match whatever layer it's on and whatnot. And so we have the arrowheads. All of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory. We can increase the arrow size so that it's more prominent. And when you're done, you can simply click OK. We can set our architectural to current, just like that. And so basically what this does is we select this dimension, we select architectural. It now displays in inches. We made the font really big, but this is kind of to show you how to change your dimensions. And so with this dimension style, we can now dimension anything right here, and it will give us the dimensions that we want in the same format, just like that. And yeah, it is also generally a very good idea to create a layer specifically dedicated to dimensions. And typically for me, I usually label dimensions in red, just like that. And so let's say these are all in layer 0, and you wanted to make these in the layer of dimension. What you can do is you can highlight all of these just like that. You can go to dimensions, and instantly they change into the dimensions layer. And so I can prove this right now if we were to freeze everything else. Hold on. Oh wait, we're currently on Canva. If we were to freeze everything else, turn these layers off. Let's go to dimensions. Only the dimensions would show, which is important. And obviously, if you were wanting to change anything, you can go into the layer properties. we can say the line type we want is center 2 for dimensions, the dashed line. Now when we close out, all of our dimensions on the dimensions layer is now perfectly dashed lines. And so it's important to set your layers. Make sure you know which objects in the drawing correspond to which, because if you need to make a really big change, it's a lot easier to click one button than to redo everything else. Yeah. With that being said, one of the last types of commands we're going to learn today is the hatch command. And the hatch command is really just kind of a way to annotate your drawing as a whole. So let's say we had apples, our apples layer, and let's say we wanted to specify this here. Say we have a closed object, just like this, and this closed object has lines defining around all sides, basically. And let's say we wanted to kind of fill in a hatch here. It's called a hatch. Basically, it's it kind of helps you, or helps the reader kind of see what kind of material this object is made out of. We can select hatch right here, and here we have a preset. Like I said, this comes all with AutoCAD installed. We have all of these different kind of textures that you can put in this closed area. And so if we scroll down, we have triangle, steel, and earth. And so typically one you're going to work with a lot is ARCONC, which stands for concrete. So if we were to select concrete, we can simply hover right over here. And as you can see, ooh, my computer, we only get one triangle here, and you're probably wondering, why is that? And that's because our scale here is to 1, and that's very zoomed in. If we were to set the scale to 50, we zoom in even further. And so we don't want that. We kind of want it to show on our graph. So let's say we chose 0.05 scale. Now, as you can see, the concrete hatching is a lot more defined. We can select 0.3. That's a little more defined, and you can kind of play around with it, but basically this communicates the idea to whoever's looking at your document that this is a concrete object. And yeah, that's the basics of the hatch command. You can also switch your hatching if you wanted to, let's say earth, which obviously is a lot more defined. We can set this to, I don't know, 40. 40 is too much. Maybe 10. Maybe 1. Yeah, just like that. So very useful command. It helps, kind of, I would say, animate the kinds of materials that are in your drawing. It's pretty simple, But yeah, the last command I want to go over, and this is a very, very important command to anyone who's new to AutoCAD. Let's open up these layers. Okay, the last command I want to talk to you guys about today is the properties command. And the properties command is your giant, you can think of it as your giant kind of help box. So if we were to type in properties right here, by the way, you can type in any command and it will autofill here if you are too lazy to look for it in the ribbon here. But if you were to click properties, as you can see, we have all these different cells with all this different information. And the Properties tab is you're able to select any object in your drawing and whatnot, and it'll tell you everything about that object. You know, what layer it's in, the line weight, how long it is, truly anything. So if we were to select this line, for example, it says this object is a line. In general, it says the color is by the layer, which is blue because the cantaloupe layer is blue. Shows us what layer it's on, the line type, line weight, transparency, thickness. It tells us our coordinates. It tells us everything about this line. And this goes for really any object you want. If we're to deselect, everything, if we're to select this, it shows it's a hatch, it shows its line type, it shows its layer, it shows the scale we picked for the hatch specifically, it shows its pattern name, and yeah, basically it reads the document and it tells us everything about that object, which is really important. So let's say we have a dimension from here to here, right there. Let's say we have that dimension. We're able to go into our properties, and we can select this dimension right there. And as you can see, we have all different types of presets. And personally, I use properties for dimensions specifically because there's a lot of formatting that you have to do. And so if you didn't like anything about this dimension, you can change it all through properties. So let's say we wanted the text color to be, I don't know, green. The text color will now change to green. Let's say we wanted the, let's say we wanted the extension line, the offset extension line, to be 7 inches. Now, as you can see in our drawing, the distance from our, oh sorry, that's a bad example. Let's say 3 inches. There we go. Now the distance between our measuring point and the start of the extension line is 3 inches apart. Let's say we wanted the arrow size to be, I don't know, 2 inches. Why not? Now we have really big arrow sizes. So if there's ever anything in your drawing about any object that you don't like, or you don't know why it looks like this, you simply select it, type in properties, and it tells you everything about it. It's very simple. And yeah, I want to say that these are your most basic commands that allow you to you know, draw something, create something really special. And so I'm going to go back into Start here. For our Nicaragua team, we're currently designing a river crossing for our pipeline we're going to install. And so I did this over the past couple of days. As you can see, it's a real simple drawing. I have my hatching over here. I have each of these things set on different dimensions. You can see if I were to click this yellow line here, you can see it's in the layer support cables. If I were to click this right here, sorry, not that line. If I were to click this right here, it's in my dimensions layer. This too, still in the support cable layer. And so with the basic skills that I taught you here, you're able to create something as simple as this, you know. You're able to have, you know, use your lines. You're able to annotate everything you make, and you're just able to make a really good understanding, a good picture for whoever is trying to construct the thing you're designing. And so there's a lot more to AutoCAD, and there's a lot more commands that you can do to kind of manipulate objects and kind of get them to work the way you want them to. But these are truly the basics. If you can, set your layers correctly and, choose your object snap, choose your scale, choose your units. If you're able to dimension things properly, it becomes, it almost becomes natural, You're going to know how to build things like this, and it comes in handy a lot for all of you civils out there who haven't taken your AutoCAD class yet. It's just a really great program overall. I like it, and I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Once again, my name is Shawn, and thank you for joining me here today. Thank you.